All right, so we're going on a deep dive today, a deep dive into the life of Harriet Tubman. And, we really want to go kind of beyond that familiar story of the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
And our guide for this is going to be Earl Conrad's 1942 book, Harriet Tubman, Negro Soldier and Abolitionist. And I think this is one of the things that really struck me.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, but how many people know she was actually considered a soldier?
Yeah.
And worked with John Brown?
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this book tries to capture kind of the full scope of her life, not just like the iconic image we have.
Right.
The very, very simplified one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning with her early life.
Okay.
So Harriet Tubman was born Araminta Ross around 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. And Conrad really paints this picture of her childhood as being incredibly brutal.
Yeah.
It's crucial to remember, the context.
Right.
Slavery was so entrenched, particularly in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of cruelty that was inflicted on enslaved people was horrific.
It was, yeah.
And and there's this one incident that Conrad highlights from her childhood.
Okay.
An overseer threw a weight intending to hit another enslaved person, but it struck Araminta in the head instead.
Oh, wow.
And so this caused lifelong seizures for her, and also these really intense visions that she would experience.
Wow.
I think this injury had just a profound impact on her life, and some people believe that it really kind of shaped her spirituality,
Right.
and even fueled her later acts of resistance.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to think about,
Okay.
She endured so much physical and emotional pain,
Right.
but she still emerged as this incredibly strong figure.
Exactly.
And Conrad suggests, like you were saying, that those visions that she had might have played a role in her spiritual beliefs. I wonder if those experiences also contributed to her incredible determination.
I know, it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because if you're having these visions, maybe there's something, some greater purpose that she felt.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's certainly an intriguing possibility, that's for sure. Those visions, while they came from this really horrible, awful event,
Right.
they might have given her some unique perspective,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, maybe even a sense of purpose.
Yeah, definitely. So later on, she marries a free black man named John Tubman, and she takes his last name.
Okay.
But, even that couldn't shield her from, the horrors of slavery.
Of course not.
It makes you realize just that constant fear and anxiety
Right.
that enslaved people lived with.
Right.
The possibility of being separated from loved ones or sold away at any moment.
Absolutely. And I imagine that fear must have been amplified even more for someone like Harriet, who was already so deeply aware of the injustices that were happening all around her.
Right. So in 1849, unable to bear it any longer, she decides to escape.
Yeah. This escape is a turning point, for sure, the beginning of this incredible journey for her.
Right, yeah.
And it's important to remember this is before the Civil War. So the Fugitive Slave Act meant that even in free states, escapees could be captured and returned to slavery.
Absolutely. So she initially planned this escape with two of her brothers.
Okay.
Can you imagine, the courage it took just to even contemplate such a journey?
Oh, yeah.
But as they set out, her brothers were overcome with fear.
Understandably so.
And turned back.
Yeah. It really makes you think about the weight of that decision.
Right.
The sheer terror they must have felt knowing what would happen if they were caught.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Harriet refused to be deterred.
Yeah.
So she followed the North Star alone, and she eventually made her way to freedom.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is.
It really shows her strength and her resilience.
Right. Solo act of courage.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Her determination, yeah.
Yeah.
And, once she tasted freedom, she dedicated her life to helping others escape as well.
Yeah.
And she became what was known as a conductor on the Underground Railroad.
Right.
And she made 19 trips
Wow.
back into slave territory,
Why?
guiding over 300 people to freedom.
Oh, my gosh. Think about the risks she was taking.
Oh, no.
19 trips, each one so dangerous.
Yeah.
And she never lost a single passenger.
It's astounding.
It's incredible.
It really is. And Conrad, talks about this network of secret routes in safe houses. And there were both black and white abolitionists
Right.
who risked their lives to help.
To help, yeah.
But Harriet was the driving force.
Yeah.
You know, she was the one who really knew the paths, the dangers, how to evade capture.
It's a testament to the power of collective action, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
And just this unwavering belief in freedom.
The human capacity for compassion
Yeah.
and resistance,
Yeah.
in the face of oppression.
Absolutely.
But as Conrad reveals, Harriet's story goes beyond the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
She evolved from conductor to political activist.
Wow. That's really interesting. So she started to understand that slavery wasn't just an individual hardship, but a systemic issue.
Right.
Something that required broader societal change.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so she interacted with really prominent figures, like William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass.
Wow.
And, this was during a time of really intense debate within the abolitionist movement, wasn't it?
It was.
Because you had some who were advocating for political solutions, and then you had others like John Brown who believed that armed revolt was the only way to end slavery.
Right. And this is where Harriet's story takes this really interesting turn.
Yeah.
She meets John Brown, this radical abolitionist who was planning an uprising at Harper's Ferry. It's really remarkable how their paths crossed at this really critical point in history.
It is. And their first encounter, as described in the book, it's something else.
Really?
Brown instantly recognized her courage and her intelligence, and he even called her General Tubman.
Wow.
It really speaks volumes about the trust and the respect he had for her.
It does, yeah. I think Brown saw in Harriet kind of a kindred spirit.
Right.
Someone who shared his belief that direct action was necessary.
Right.
To end slavery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Harriet's experience with the Underground Railroad made her an invaluable asset.
Right.
To Brown's plan.
To Brown's plan, yeah.
And she was tasked with recruiting supporters.
Wow.
Leveraging that network that she had built over years of guiding people to freedom.
Yeah.
And it really highlights her willingness to go beyond just helping individuals escape, but to actually dismantle this entire institution of slavery.
Absolutely. She was thinking bigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, of course, the raid didn't go as planned.
Right.
Brown was captured.
Yeah.
And he was executed.
He was.
But Harriet's involvement, it really speaks volumes about her commitment.
It does, yeah.
Her willingness to risk everything.
Right.
And it really underscores, I think, the depth of her convictions.
Yeah.
The lengths to which she was willing to go.
Yeah.
For the cause of justice.
It's a powerful reminder that the fight for freedom, often comes at a great personal cost.
It does. It does. And then, of course, the Civil War breaks out.
Right.
And this provided a new arena for Harriet.
Yeah.
To fight for Black liberation.
Yeah, it really did. The outbreak of the war.
Yeah.
It just provided this whole new landscape, all these new possibilities for Tubman to contribute.
Yeah. And she immediately joined the Union Army.
Correct.
Initially working to aid escaped slaves in South Carolina. And, one of the things that I found so striking was how her past experiences, navigating the South, understanding the terrain became so crucial.
Absolutely. She had all this knowledge and skills that were just invaluable to the Union cause.
Yeah. And it wasn't just her bravery, right? It was that deep understanding.
It was that deep knowledge.
Of the land and the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And she wasn't limited to just one role. She served as a nurse, tending to the wounded and sick, but also as a spy and a scout, gathering intelligence on Confederate positions, guiding Union troops through unfamiliar territory.
It's incredible. I mean, just the range.
It is,
of things she was doing.
It speaks to her adaptability, too.
Right.
Her ability to kind of take the skills that she honed on the Underground Railroad and apply them to these very different situations.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the Combahee River Raid in 1863.
Yes.
Which was, a major military operation that was led by Harriet Tubman herself.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about freeing slaves.
No.
It was a strategic military victory.
It was.
Can you talk a little bit about her role as a military leader in that raid?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this raid really showed off her strategic thinking, her understanding of the terrain, but also the psychology of the people who were involved.
Right.
Under her command, Union forces sailed up the Combahee River. They ended up liberating over 700 slaves, and they really struck a blow against the Confederacy.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. I mean, reading about it, I was just struck by, her courage, but also her tactical brilliance. I mean,
Yes,
she was able to outmaneuver the enemy
she was.
and achieve this major victory.
Yeah, and I think it really challenged the perception of enslaved people as just passive victims.
Right.
Here was Harriet leading this military operation, outsmarting Confederate forces and playing this, just pivotal role in the fight for freedom.
Right, right. It's a truly inspiring moment in her story.
It is.
But even after the war, her fight for equality continued. And it's heartbreaking to think that even after all she did for her country, Tubman faced such hardship in her later years.
She did.
Struggling with poverty, limited recognition. Does this reflect kind of a larger societal failure to address racial injustice in the post-war era?
Oh, absolutely. I think it really highlights how deep-seated racial inequality was.
Yeah.
It persisted even after the formal abolition of slavery.
Right.
Black people, even those who had contributed so much to the nation, they continued to face discrimination and systemic barriers.
Right. And despite these challenges, she never stopped advocating
She didn't.
for Black rights, for women's suffrage, and even for care for the elderly.
She was amazing.
This wasn't just about her own freedom.
No.
It was about uplifting her community
Right.
and fighting for justice for all.
It says so much about her character. She wasn't driven by personal gain or recognition. Her focus really remained on service, on making a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, yeah. And Conrad shares this really poignant anecdote about Tubman in her later years.
Okay.
There was a reporter who was interviewing her about her childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked her if she had enjoyed any of the fruits that grew on the plantation.
Wow. It's a question that reveals so much, doesn't it?
It does.
About, just the vast gulf in understanding, the disconnect between, the experience of the enslaved
Right.
and the perspective of those who benefited from their labor.
Exactly. And her response, it's both heartbreaking and defiant. She said, "Yes, sir, I ate apples and I ate plums. I'd slip into the garden and eat them. And I'd eat them till I was so full I couldn't eat anymore." But then she added, "But I was always afraid. I was afraid they'd catch me and whip me." And it makes you realize that enduring trauma of slavery,
Yeah.
the way it permeated every aspect of life, even something as simple as enjoying a piece of fruit.
Right. It really underscores that freedom is so much more than just the absence of physical chains.
It is.
It's about living without fear,
Uh-huh.
without the constant threat of violence and oppression.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that the fight for true equality, it's ongoing.
It is.
It's a challenge for us to continue working towards a society where everyone can experience that kind of freedom.
I agree.
So as we reflect on Harriet Tubman's extraordinary life, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think for me, it's the sheer breadth of her impact. She was so much more than just a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was a soldier, a spy, a political activist, a humanitarian,
She was.
She fought for freedom on so many different fronts, and she never gave up.
Yeah. And she did it all with incredible courage and compassion.
She did.
It really makes you think about what's possible when you combine that unwavering conviction with relentless action.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Her life offers these really valuable lessons about courage and perseverance and just the power of the human spirit to overcome, even the most daunting obstacles.
Absolutely. And it's easy to get lost in that larger than life narrative.
It is.
But Conrad reminds us that Harriet Tubman was also, a real person.
A real person, yeah.
A woman who faced, immense personal challenges, from chronic pain to poverty, yet never wavered in her commitment to justice.
No, she never did. It really challenges us to look beyond that kind of, the iconic image and to really see the complexity of her life, her struggles, her triumphs, all of it.
Right, right. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Harriet Tubman's life and legacy, what final thought would you leave our listeners with?
Yeah, and it's, it doesn't always have to be these big, huge things.
Right.
It can be smaller things, too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't all have to lead a raid up the Combahee River.
Exactly.
But we can all be conductors in our own way,
Yes.
guiding others towards a better future.
I love that.
So as we conclude our deep dive into the extraordinary life of Harriet Tubman, let's leave our listeners with this final thought.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I would say, may her story inspire us to live with courage,
yes,
to fight for justice, and to never stop believing in the power of hope and the possibility
right.
of change.
Beautifully said.
Yeah,
Beautifully said.
thank you.
That's something I think we can all take to heart.
I agree.
No matter where we are in our lives or what challenges we're facing.
Mm.
And I hope our listeners will, continue to explore Harriet Tubman's legacy and find ways to honor her memory in their own lives and in their communities.
Me too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
It's been a real privilege to kind of delve into this remarkable woman's life with you.
Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.